Well, when I think about a close relationship and my identity impacting a relationship, really the first relationship that it impacted was my relationship with myself. I knew from a very early age that I was attracted to girls and boys equally. I'm completely straight up bisexual. That's kind of ironic, straight up bisexual.
Hello, and welcome to Pride and Healing Hearts, a special series of Matt and Lucy Mind the Gap. I'm Lucy, pronoun she, her, and I'm happy that you're joining us today as we continue to explore powerful stories of reconciliation, self-healing, and personal growth within the LGBTQIA+ community.
And I'm Mad, pronouns she, her. This is the second episode in a series in which we talk with individuals who've navigated the challenge of coming out as a member of the LGBTQIA+ community and, as a result, have faced strained or broken relationships, scorn from family and friends, and bias from peers and colleagues.
Today, we're honored to have Martha Lawrence with us. Martha's journey is a profound example of courage and personal resilience. Welcome, Martha. Could you start by introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about your background?
Thank you for welcoming me, and I'm delighted to be here. Martha, she, her. I have been a writer my whole life. I currently work as an executive editor. I've worked with Ken Blanchard for over 20 years, which is the best job in the world, creating articles and books together. And I'm just delighted to be here to share with you my story. I was previously married. I have a son from a first marriage. For the past 7 years, I've been in a relationship with an absolutely magnificent being, Elisa. She's my soulmate, my twin flame. She's the closest thing to a divine being that I've ever known, and I'm incredibly grateful to be in a relationship with her. So that's my story. My son is also gay.
Well, let's go from the beginning. Can you tell us about a significant moment in your life where your LGBTQIA+ identity impacted a close relationship and maybe what that experience was like for you?
Well, when I think about a close relationship and my identity impacting a relationship, really the first relationship that it impacted was my relationship with myself. I knew from a very early age that I was attracted to girls and boys equally. I'm completely straight up bisexual. That's kind of ironic, straight up bisexual. But, in fourth grade, I had a mad crush on a beautiful little blonde girl who was very bright. And I had an equally mad crush on a tall, dark, handsome fourth grader. So I've loved girls and boys my whole life. The impact for me was when I began to get clues early on that liking girls was not okay. There were all kinds of hints from other kids, like if I was holding a girl's hand, it would be like, ew, the ew factor was very, so I was like, okay, that's not okay to do. Got it. But it's okay to like boys. So it just seems like I never had a time where I wasn't masking who I was. So it was really the relationship with myself. There was also a key moment in seventh grade. In seventh grade, I had a wonderful English teacher who, for some dumb reason, decided that the class needed to do an exercise where we all wrote constructive criticism about our classmates. And then the idea was that at the end, you would get this constructive criticism. You would hear all the things that your classmates had to say about you as a person. Well, when my feedback came back, it was overwhelmingly that Martha is very smart, but she needs to be more feminine. She's not feminine enough. She acts too much like a boy. It was just, it was like overwhelming. And so it was like, oh, shoot, I haven't been masking well enough. That was a key moment for me. I also had a lot of pressure to sort of mask my competitiveness. I'm I'm a very competitive person, and I really enjoyed school. And I noticed when I would compete, particularly when I got into like 8th and 9th grade and really competing with the boys, like in math, that was not cool. I wasn't going to be liked as a girl. So if girls don't like you and then the boys don't like you, you're really screwed. So I sort of held back, and I started really holding back. So the impact for me was really with myself. I didn't come out to my family. I don't think I even had an awareness or a word for being bisexual. But I do remember a moment where my mom was talking to me, and maybe I was about 13 years old, but my mom was talking to me about women who liked women. Mm. And I remember her talking about, the sex act. And she said, oh, God, this is really hard to talk about. But when she was talking about women liking women, she got this look on her face that was like she was going to vomit. And she said, "It makes me so sick to my stomach." And at that moment, I'm sorry. I really internalized a lot of self-hatred, because how dirty and how perverted and how awful was I that I found women beautiful. And so that went way underground. That went way, way underground. And fortunately, I did like boys. So it was boys all the way. And I found myself a nice, handsome pre-law guy in college. And he was just the pinnacle of macho. And that's who I married, by God.
Acceptable.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. So did you ever have to deal with your mother's reaction when you ended up in a relationship with a woman?
So what ended up happening, and this is what I think is wonderful for listeners, is that, I discovered that people do evolve. For all I know, my mother was masking her own bisexuality. I mean, I don't know. But it was so verboten to be gay. I'm in my late 60s. So we're talking about, the late 60s and early 70s. And after my father passed away, my mom actually went back to work, and she began working with a woman who was a very, very beautiful, very successful lesbian. And so she got to see a lesbian who was a human being and who she actually loved and respected. She also became super good buddies with Frank and Dean, her two gay buddies. And, they used to drink together. I mean, they would party down. And so, I never talked to my mom about my sexuality. My marriage did break up, and I never brought girlfriends around. But finally, I think I remember a time where we were talking. This was later in my life. Maybe I was in my 20s. And she said, I hear from your sister that you swing both ways. How do you swing both ways? And I said, yeah, actually, I do. And she seemed to be okay with that. She didn't condone it, but she seemed to be okay with it. So, she seemed to evolve, and that was good. My sister was also a very, very conservative Christian for a time in her life. She also evolved. She had a cancer scare, a couple of really bad health scares, and she ended up switching churches, and she is now very open and affirming. So my family kind of evolved.
Wow. Good. Yay. Cool. Do you think your first marriage broke up because? No, your first marriage broke up because you weren't right together.
My first marriage broke up because that was not the right partnership for me. Right. And apparently not the right partnership for his subsequent 3 wives. But I will say that, I always had a girlfriend. Even if she wasn't a girlfriend, I was always more comfortable with women. I always felt closer to women. And when I finally started having relationships with women, and there haven't been a whole lot of them that were meaningful, but, very deep and committed, but it's so much easier. It's just a world more comfortable for me. And so in retrospect, I realize, I may have been a little more gay than bi. I think because I had that option and because society was so rigid about it that I just was too afraid, to be who I really was. I'm really glad that I didn't have to cut ties. And one thing that's really wonderful to me is that my partner, Elisa, she loves her parents. And I was a little concerned about meeting them, not only because, we're a female-female relationship, but also because I'm quite a bit older than she is. And I can't tell you how deeply I was embraced and how loved I am by that family. And so that's been really, really wonderful as well.
So I'm curious, in your journey, it sounds like there might have been a turning point where you sort of were able to start unraveling those things that maybe you had internalized from when you were younger. I'm wondering, when was that moment and maybe how did it impact your life?
That's a really good question, Lucy. There was a particular period in my life where things really shifted. And as so many transitions do, this one happened because of horrible things happening in my life. In one short span, the man that I had been dating for 7 years broke up with me.
Oh my gosh.
My sister was hospitalized and in a coma for 9 days and was not expected to live. She had a severe sepsis infection.
Oh my gosh.
My son disappeared and no one knew where he was or whether he was dead or alive. And my therapist got Alzheimer's. And so,
sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but it's like cherry on top.
I know. And I was going through menopause. So all that was happening and I was starting to unravel. One of the things that had been really hurtful about masking my sexuality is that I had been sent to a Bible school when I was very young. My parents were not religious, but they didn't want me in public schools. And so they sent me to a very conservative Christian school, which was hard on me because I have a deep relationship with God. I am extremely spiritual person. I feel the love of God a lot and took that very seriously. And I was shamed about who I was in so many ways at that school. I certainly knew that, I didn't let them know that I was, that I liked girls, but I knew that would send me straight to hell in their book. And so I'd been cut off from a spiritual community by that. And when I had all those horrible things happen to me when I turned 50, I discovered an open and affirming church. I needed something. My therapist was gone. I needed something. And I had read about this church that was doing incredible things in the community. And I had actually seen them marching in the San Diego Pride Parade. So I looked them up and I went over there and I walked through the doors of that church the first time. And on one wall, there is a giant flag. It's probably about 15 by 30. Giant rainbow flag mounted on the wall. And I said, I think I'm going to be able to find a home here. And that church was so supportive and so affirming. And they held me and got me through a really, really horrible time in my life. And also really belonging to that church really helped me understand that it was okay to come out about who I was, that the gig was up. There was no point in masking. And so I started speaking up more, and that included at work. I don't know quite the timing, but there was a time where California was Proposition 8 was a big deal, gay marriage. And that was being talked about a lot at work. And a colleague I dearly love and respect and admire said to me, well, I don't understand why gays aren't happy with civil unions. I mean, what's the big deal? And this person has authority over me. This is the person on the leadership team. And instead of being quiet and nodding my head, I said, the reason it's not okay to have just civil unions instead of full marriage is the same reason that it's not okay for Blacks in the South to have separate drinking fountains and to have separate bathrooms. Separate is not equal. And the reaction to that was a big nod of the head. Oh, I get it. And it was so empowering to just kind of inform and be honest and be vulnerable. But it's not about arguing it. And I don't have to convert anybody. I just have to be myself and be true to myself.
Well, wait, it's not about arguing? I love something Sarah said in the last episode. She was like, I can't change someone else's beliefs. Mm-mm. And I think that's true. But I also love what you said, Martha, that people can evolve, which is true. I'm so glad you found your church. And I'm really sorry about your therapist.
Thanks.
Is there anything else you wanted to share with our listeners that you think would be helpful to them?
Well, always listen to your inner self, of course. Don't do anything that makes you feel unsafe. But there are lots of allies. And if you need someone to talk to, find safe people to talk to. There's tremendous healing in community. I don't want to pretend like it's completely safe to be gay, even in America. I think there are 62 or 64 countries in the world where it is illegal to have consensual sex with, some member of the same sex. And I was really despondent to find out that one of those countries is Jamaica, because that used to be a favorite vacation spot. So it freaks me out that, my partner and I cannot vacation in Jamaica and be open about who we are. My son, who is also gay, had a job at 7-Eleven when he was late teenager. And there was an angry customer who was so incensed by his gayness. And mind you, my son he's 6'4". He's, very conservative looking. But this customer, my son was at the cash register and he just punched him and broke his nose and hurled gay epithet at him. And it was going to be prosecuted as a hate crime, but for whatever reason, it ended up being just prosecuted as an assault. But, it's not necessarily, when I say all that to say it is not necessarily safe, even in our country, sadly, to be who you are. So always listen to your gut about if you don't feel safe, don't speak up. But if you can find that safe space, to find allies and tell the truth, because the truth will set you free.
Good advice. So as we wrap up today's episode, thank you, Martha, for sharing your story with us. What a journey. We really appreciate your courage and your insights.
We hope that today's conversation has offered hope and guidance to anyone who might also be facing similar challenges. We encourage you to remember that healing is always a journey, and it's one that you can only take one step at a time. Sometimes that looks like reconciling with others, and other times it looks like finding peace on your own. And if you have any thoughts or stories that you'd like to share, we would love to hear them. So please reach out to us at leadify@blanchard.com or engage with us on social media. As always, links are in the show description.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Mad and Lucy Mind the Gap. Until next time, keep minding the gap, looking out for one another, and advocating for the love and acceptance everyone deserves.